Welcome to Zeta Protocol, the Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes podcast with 100% less wine and 97.6% more wisdom. I'm Egnards, joined by Pico Burrito, and each episode we will bring you informed, thought-provoking takes on the latest news, updates, and mechanics. Whether you're a Day 1 veteran or just slapped your first Zeta on Boba Fett, we're here to help you think deeper about the game you love. Now, Pico, before we get started, I have to tell you, we did our first episode 2 weeks ago. We said we weren't going to have a defined cadence. We weren't sure what we were going to do. We're now meeting a weekend, 2 weeks late, 2 weeks later, rather. In that time, I think I got about 20 DMs from people. I don't get that many DMs. And I know before we started the show, you thought you'd be piggybacking off of my audience. But every DM that I got was, hey, great first episode. So glad Pico Burrito is back. He's awesome. So, like, nothing about me, nothing about how I did. It was just all, like, super pumped for Pico. So I wanted to, pump some smoke up your ass before we got started today.
One, thank you, and to the people that are saying nice things, I appreciate it. By the way, y'all can message me. Maybe I need to start posting on the server a little bit more, but I do have DMs open. You can slide into them whenever you want to. Keep it, we'll say PG-13 for the most part. To that point, I actually did get another suggestion, a show name for us.
Okay.
It came in from someone from the old HNN server, and they wanted us to go by the Professor and the Skipper. And
I think
I
was
was like,
that.
yeah, and I was like, under no circumstance are we doing that. And I feel really bad because I think it swung a little bit harder than what I intended for that. So it was like this lengthy apology. I'm like, no, I'm just not going by the Skipper. Like that's all that it comes down to. So
we had some interesting names. So we filmed, I think it was last Wednesday, and then I did Three Scoundrels the next day, and people were pumped, and they were dropping all of these names, and they wanted us to do like the breakfast burrito. I must have seen like 20 different names, and there was like 3 or 4 really good ones that I think I sent you, and then there was some that I was just like, do you know me? Like, does that fit my vibe?
yeah.
But we're here. We have a name now.
Yeah.
We figured it out. We have. It's weird to say branding, right? Because it's not like we're taking sponsorships, but we have like we have a general aesthetic, which I am happy about.
Yeah. But by the way, this is like, it's like exercise. It's not going to exercise the first time isn't hard. It's the second time. So I think we've at least done this. We've shown up for the second time to figure out how this is going to work. So probably a good move from that side.
Well, the first episode, the way I saw it, there was no. It was a pilot, right? Like it was. Let's see if this works, and if it doesn't, we can all like shake hands, take our SAG minimums, and go our separate ways. But now it's real, and now we have to be informative to some degree. And there are stakes to manage. So I was a little bit nervous, not to talk to you, but like to make sure that I was smart. But I'm ready now. I've got my whiskey. I'm good to go.
Awesome. By the way, before we jump into it, because we want to be informative, I do want to share a little bit of wisdom, because I assume like the Venn diagram of people that are going to listen to this podcast are also people that use Discord. Like it's probably a circle in that case. So quick note, you can find out when people block you. It's actually really simple. Like if you are on a server with someone and you go in and you click their name or their profile picture, it will tell you all the shared servers you're with. If you ever look at that and there is someone that is not sharing the server that you are currently on, they have you blocked. So just a little tip out there for people. If you're ever interested in it, especially if you're like trying to interact with someone, they're not responding, they just might not be seeing it. So I wanted to, Discord is part of the SWGOH community, and I just kind of wanted to get that out there for everybody.
Especially on smaller servers, it makes it a lot easier. It makes it harder to disappear. I actually use that server, that feature when people DM me, because I do get daily DMs, not too many of them, and sometimes I'll check and I'll look and I'll see that I have no servers in common with them, and I know right away, okay, this is an art bot. They're trying to sell me branding. I will
Yep, yep.
politely tell them that I have somebody that I work with, who, by the way, I did mean to shout out. Moonborn did all of our stuff for us. He does a lot of stuff for
Looks
me.
great.
He
Yep.
does stuff for Scribe. He does stuff for Phil. He does them for everything and for everybody, and he's awesome. And these bots will go back and forth with me, and I'll play with them for like a half hour. Like, oh, can
But
you look at my profile? No. Can you check my portfolio? No. Can you give me advice? No, no. I appreciate the hustle, but you're not listening to
yeah,
me. So
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
two sides of that one coin there.
By the way, I love the new logo. I do think it's interesting that it has a very like South Beach, Miami vibe for a guy in Jersey and a guy in Ohio. Like, we're probably not hanging out in the place where you're going to see a logo that looks like that, but I think it looks great. I love it. So
I need people to remind me tomorrow to send them the first draft of the logo because I just think it's just so fun. Like it looks good. It looked great before, but now it doesn't look inappropriate. And whereas
yes, yeah,
before it very like I showed it to my wife and she's like, yeah, that's a big burrito penis.
yeah.
Um,
It looked like the equivalent of some of the very special actresses on Instagram getting ready to advertise what their services are without telling you what their services are. You know.
yes, on my private website. Come
Yes.
chat with me. I love to chat with people because I'm on Instagram and I know all of these things and I totally don't
Yeah.
go on any of those sites. Um, we have a lot to pack into today.
We do. We
We
do.
have a kit reveal. We have just the era of piracy in general came out. We have the raid just released, and
Yep.
literally maybe 2 hours before we started to film, we got kind of like, "Hey guys, hold on the raid. There might be some changes."
Yeah.
So we have a lot to
Yeah.
pack in. Where do you want to start?
Um, let's knock out the era piracy stuff because I think the raid's probably going to be a pretty lengthy topic.
Okay,
And as we're trying to figure out what the show looks like, maybe we'll start to maybe at least come up with a pattern on these things. Um, we are building the airplane as we're trying to get off the ground. So
we don't want to keep people guessing every time and just kind of jump around all the time. All right, so we're gonna
yeah.
pull that up over here. We have the era of piracy. Do you want to read it? Do you want me to read it?
I'll tell you what, I don't have the era of piracy in our notes, so I can't actually pull up the link. I can get to Captain Etho, but that's it. So
Well, because I'm
um,
an amateur, just and I realized as we were talking, I was like, oh crap, I didn't have it up at all. So I stealthily, on my very loud mechanical keyboard, started to slowly type "era of piracy." So I do have it up on the screen. I might jump around a little bit just because Meathead likes to throw in his little vibe checks here and there, and I'm mostly there for it now. Now that he's earned his place. So we have the Era of Piracy. This was released 9 days ago. Yar, mateys. Always wanted to do that. Set sails to the era of piracy on the quest for unknown location transmission, right? I don't know if that's an Atten thing or if that's like a TB planet that we're maybe talking about. I don't think that was addressed at all, but who knows? At last, the moment I've been waiting for. Perhaps you have too, though you just didn't know it yet. Allow me to introduce myself for the three beings in the galaxy who somehow haven't heard of me. I'm realizing I didn't even read this a first time. You may know me from tales of priceless cargo I've recently acquired, allegedly, of course. You may know me from my legendary escapades involving Jedi Masters, Sith Lords, a few massive armies, and well, the details change, but the outcome is always the same. Profit. For me. A word of warning offered, free of charge. Do not let this charming smile lull you into a false sense of security. I live by one simple rule, speak freely, but carry a big blaster. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, droids, bounty hunters, bureaucrats, and whatever that guy is, prepare yourself. From the Outer Rim's most disreputable cantinas to the core's least secure vaults, I give you the undisputed, unpredictable, undeniable, profitable pride of Florum. And we have Pirate King Hondo is releasing. I don't know if you're a fan of Borderlands, but there is a character, Marcus, who is
Okay.
basically this character,
Right.
and that that entire paragraph just described Marcus to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, I read this while I was on vacation last week, and when it got to the first paragraph, you may know me for my my tales of priceless cargo. I'm like, oh, it's Honda.
yeah, of
I
course.
whoever I assume Meathead wrote this, he did a spot on Hondo through the whole thing to the point that like the next paragraph, I'm like, I'm now reading it in his voice. It was great from that side. Um, you surprised?
I mean, I think not really with there being pirates. I said to you last week that I'm not really super familiar with pirates as an era of Star Wars.
Yeah.
So I really only know Hondo.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
the people who some say might be a pirate. So, like, they're like, oh, Han Solo or oh, Maul. Um, this is really the only major pirate that I know other than Jude Law, whose
Yeah.
character name I don't even know outside of looking at the screen right now. So no, I'm not
I'm pretty sure his name
surprised.
is. I think Jude Law's name is Pirate Jude Law. I think that was his
Pirate
Star
Jude
Wars name.
Law. It is.
Pirate Jude Law.
Well, in here it's
Um,
Captain Silvo, which was confused. Like I looked it up and then it showed like a mask, and then I was confused and I had to Google it 3 times, and then I realized, oh, that's Jude
yeah.
Law.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um, look, the again, this inevitably come into is Hondo a galactic legend?
yeah,
Well, he is a galactic legend in his own mind. Is first, which is great, and two, I've yet to meet someone who is aware of Hondo because he's been in a bunch of media who
yeah,
hasn't said I like that character. And frankly, at this point, that's what I think a galactic legend needs to be more than anything.
yes.
It's just like universally people like them. They're just exciting characters to have and do that. So uh, I I want him to be the first galactic legend that summons a unit, and I want Melch, his little Ugnaught buddy, to be a summon on the battlefield with it. That's all that I want.
That is what I wanted for Jabba,
Yeah,
and it didn't happen.
yeah,
I was like, oh, Salacious Crumb has to be a summon. He has to be part of this. And he is part of it, but not in the way that I had imagined that it would be. Um, Now, with Hondo, we are getting 6 marquees.
yep,
We're getting a conquest character. We just got Captain Ithano, and we'll talk about his kit later. We're getting Quiggold and Kix as part of these next 2 episodes. We are getting Brutus, we are getting Vane, and we're getting Captain Jude Law.
yep,
And then obviously the next conquest character is Maz.
yep.
As a Star Wars fan, as someone who does watch the cartoons, who does watch the shows, but generally I only really watch things once or twice, especially when they're
Yep.
9, 7, 8, 9 seasons long. There was not a single character that I knew their name in this list. There were a couple that once I Googled them, I was like, oh, that guy.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
they were all that guy. Now, I happen to know that you do a little bit more rewatching than I do, and watch
a little
specific
bit.
episodes sometimes, in preparation of things. When you saw this list, did you recognize all of them, some of them, none of them?
None. I had to be reminded that Ithano was in The Force Awakens, and I've probably seen The Force Awakens 5 or 6 times.
Okay.
So I've seen it enough. He was a blink and you miss it character. Hicks, I had never heard of. In fact, I had not gotten all the way through the thing, so I was really excited that we were maybe getting another clone to go somewhere else, only to find out that he really was a pirate.
Yeah.
Um, Vane was a name that I remembered from. I take that back. I remember Vane was a character and the only reason why I remembered him is I appreciate that they did a real prosthetic mask for him, but I just think the mask looks a little plastic on him. And yeah, and I couldn't have. I watched and enjoyed um, the pirate show. I'm drawing a blank on it right.
Skeleton Crew?
Skeleton Crew. I really like that show,
Yeah.
but I couldn't have told you what Jude Law's name was.
Yes.
So yeah. Um, but like when I saw the picture of Wolf Boy, like yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, Wolf Boy, like Wolf Boy's cool. Like so, yeah, I didn't know any of them.
Okay. So, like, again, I think we talked about this a little last week when it comes to, this is your Star Wars, this is their Star Wars. And obviously, there's a collective where you can enjoy any Star Wars. And maybe this just isn't the era for me. I am personally, and we'll read through there isn't really that much other than what we expect after this. But to me, I feel, I did a video last week where I just said I feel very whelmed. Like they're new
Yeah,
characters. They're great. I love when new characters come out. I love when things shift, but I also enjoy when I have just a cursory understanding of who a character is. And I feel a little frustrated when I'm getting 6 characters in a row that mean nothing to me.
yeah. Uh, the the really interesting part for me right now is if you look at the pirate release and let's bring in Smee into that as well.
Okay.
I've got 4 pirates from the Force Awakens because Maz goes into that group.
Yes.
I've got 4 pirates from Skeleton Crew that go into that group, and I've got a galactic legend. How do what is the team makeup for that? Like who is Hondo pulling with him to make a group of 5? And it could be Hondo and Hondo, great, that's fine, but it
Probably.
they feel like they're gonna be great 3 teams for 3s,
Yeah.
but what does 5s look what does a team of 5 look like?
I think we're definitely going to see Hondo with Hondo, just like we
Yep,
see, General Kenobi with Jedi Master
yep,
Kenobi, and the same thing with Jedi Master Luke and Jedi Knight Luke, and crew with SLKR.
yeah,
Um, when it comes to the Force Awakens and the more presumably light side pirates, I have this feeling, and I do think that there's some merit to saying the team will function better in threes. I have a feeling that of the characters we currently have, like Enfys Nest, who's like a solo beast right now, but she has fallen out of favor. I have a feeling we're going to see her being put into the team and shoehorned in there somewhere. I think actually
yeah.
that her kit did get updated slightly, stealth updated with Profit
Yeah.
put into the kit.
Oh, I
Um,
didn't see that.
yeah, I didn't.
So she has
I don't think there
okay.
was anything in any kits. There was no announcement of it. Someone actually posted it on my Discord today, and I just happened to read it, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that happened.
Which is funny because one of the things I was thinking about as I knew we were going to be talking about this tonight is like this is one of the pieces where I think the new mercenary faction fell down
Yeah.
is the new characters all have a way to generate and interact with mercenary, but none of the old characters do. So now it's I've
Yes.
got a team of 3 and then I just kind of bolt 2 things on to give me a team in 5s.
And it's just
Um,
random too. Like you throw
yeah,
your team of 3, and you go, okay, I'm gonna put Hondo in there, I guess, and then somebody,
yeah,
Dengar, maybe. I don't know. It doesn't even matter. It's those 3 who are doing all of the work. I
yeah.
actually just checked in game, and yeah, there's a clause now in Enfy's Nest's kit in her Fighting Instinct unique, that says Nest can't gain more than 5 stacks of profit. I believe that's the only change right now. I don't know if they're planning more or not, but I did find it interesting that they kind of like stealth shoved that in
Okay.
there.
So I've got to imagine. Well, I guess yeah. It's Santa and Nest are the only 2 that actually don't have profit as part of their. Although Honda's got profit, correct? Right?
I don't
Yeah. Yeah.
think it was part of it, but it might have been put in. I thought Profit was only presumably part of the of TB.
He's got
Actually,
ransom. Yeah. That. Yeah.
he
He's
has it
got
in his
ransom.
kit now too. Hondo can't gain more than 5 stacks of Profit.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if some of the newer pirates are going to be able to have more than 5 stacks. It seems weird
Yeah.
to lock it from a character point of view and not from an ability point of view.
yeah, that'll be interesting. But still, so we're getting 8, 9. We're getting 9 new pirates. There are 3 in game, which gives us 12.
Yeah. Some are
So,
just on the side.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
bench warmers.
Yep. It'll be interesting to see how that all kind of shakes out. Unless, you know, does Resistance Finn get a touch up that makes him a pirate? Because I guess he did agree to get on the ship. He just was never he just didn't actually get on the
He
ship.
just did.
So I don't
They
know.
might write that
Yeah.
in. Don't, Meathead. I hope you're not listening to this. Don't do it. Don't do it, Meathead. Uh, God. I don't. It wouldn't. I mean, Resistance Finn. Well, actually, you do use him with a Zori team, and I happen to like that team
Yeah.
quite a bit at this point in the game. The one thing that I did find weird, and I was saying this to a few people, I think it's strange with us getting two pirate conquest characters. Uh, why is Smee the first pirate character when all of the skeleton crew characters are happening on the second half? Instead of giving us Maz first, where she would seemingly be useful with some of these characters. You know, like I'm sure Smee will be used, but it's probably going to be underwhelming until he has his team
And he will be here in 3 weeks.
in 3 weeks. But he's
Yeah.
not going to have
So
a team.
and I don't I mean, I don't think that Maz, if they would have flipped him, I don't think Maz would have telegraphed anything. So it's not like a case of like we did it in this order because we were trying to, cloak what our plans were. So yeah, I and you and I had a Discord exchange, and it is way too deep of a topic to get into here. But I have an idea around how we can align conquest into the era
Yeah.
piece, and because right now what you're running into is conquest is offset by a couple of weeks,
Hmm.
and we're getting these scenarios where like we got Jocasta 2 months before she was really usable anyplace. We're gonna get Smeed from that side. I would just like to see them all kind of line up, really cleanly from that point. And yeah, the conquest character doesn't have to tie to that, but if it does, let's actually get the team at the end of it so it's all usable and I'm not waiting for something else.
We have seen, I always red crate conquest just because I
Yep.
have this problem where I recognize that I don't need a character, but I still do it anyway. Um, but after conquest ends, I enjoy bringing that character at least to R7 and using them. And definitely over the last couple, and Smee is going to be part of that, and Jocasta is going to be part of that, where you level them up and you go, well, okay, I don't. They're just going to sit here now. Maybe I'll throw Jocasta in a Kel team and maybe it'll work. Like, I don't know, but I don't know what to do with this character. Whereas in the past, even recent past with like Dark Ray, right, where you get her and you go, great, my Slicker team is going to kick ass
Yep.
now.
Yep.
I'm pumped
Yeah.
for this team now. Or even Luthen. Whether or not you like Luthen in the game, he elevated the team that was already in the game.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I see a lot of people who are going, I don't need it in 3 months. I can get it in 5 because I'm not going to have
Yeah.
the team available.
And especially if that character is going to be kind of the linchpin to make some of these new teams work.
Yeah,
If let's say at the end of it, it's this first group of 3 pirates, the Force Awakened era pirates. Like if Maz is the secret piece that makes them work together, all you're gonna have is people complain for the next 3 months that they're a terrible team because they're missing that lever,
yeah.
and then they get kind of sidelined, and no one invests in that whole 9 yards, and it's just. I just think it would have been much to your point. I think it would have been cleaner if they would have just kind of flopped them around.
And even if they weren't ready to release Maz, right? Like flip around the Skeleton Crew and the Force Awakens
Yeah.
characters.
Yep.
It seems strange, and I'm sure they have their reasons. This kit wasn't ready, that kit wasn't ready. I get that, I understand that from a development point of view, but my point would be when you're prioritizing projects, prioritize the projects that make the most sense for the timeline instead of just the projects that you want to put into the timeline.
Yeah, the kind of anecdote I'll make on that, and I told people, and I actually need to be careful. I actually just turned my glass around because of the logo is way too out there in this. But I work for a large hardware and software manufacturer, and it's interesting when you start getting different teams that own different piece of these that you do end up with these cycles are different. And it
Yeah,
may be a team that's actually doing the conquest development is separate than the era battle piece, and it's just like they just never had a conversation. Like it's shocking how often like no,
that
stick your head up
happens.
from the cube farm and yell across the top like, hey, what are you working on? So yeah, communication seems to be a problem with every
Every
company.
company. So it's not a CG thing.
Yes.
We're not here
Yeah. Yeah.
dropping shade on CG. We're dropping shade on corporate America. All right. So
Yeah.
relax,
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Now, as for the rest of the era, because I do know that we have a lot that we need to get done tonight,
Yep.
I'm just going to kind of bounce around here. Um, all of the pirates are going to be usable in the raid. We
Yep.
are getting an era battle. The first one is called Plunder and Pillage. This is where my only confusion is because everything else is just the information on what's in the episode passes. It says the era battles cadence seen with previous era battles is also the planned cadence for this event. Now, with the era battles that we just got for the Order 66 for the clones versus the Vanguard, we got 4 clones and 2 Vanguard, and it was a very clear distinction. But with the Era of Piracy, we're getting 3 from one property and 3 from the other property. Where is the line being drawn on what is in each era battle? Because they're saying it's the same cadence, but to me, it makes more sense for it to be 3 and 3 versus 4 and 2.
Yeah. So I'm trying to see if I can find the screenshot around this someplace because if you go all the way back to the announcement of era battles,
Yes.
at the start of Order 66, they actually laid out the 6 month view of what those will be, and it looks like the threshold is between the two. It's in the midpoint of the second episode that they
Okay.
crossed from Era Battle 1 into Era Battle 2.
So it's going to be
But
3 and 3, you think?
yeah, yeah, but there's still in what and I actually mapped this out, I just don't have it in a way that's really easy to read. Uh, Order 66, the clones Era Battle falls off this week or next week, so it will not be
Yes.
included, but Vanguards will. And then when we get to the second piracy one, Vanguard falls off, the other pirate one stays, but at the end, they bring them all back at when essentially we get the Galactic Legend Hondo. So
Okay.
if you didn't get a chance to run any of like the clones
Yes.
era battles for that, you'll be able to actually do that in 6 months because the assumption is you'll have built the team up from that side at the end of 6 months.
And
So
Meathead did say that they were looking and trying to toy with the idea of these coming back as one-off events every once in
yeah,
a while, which I do like because now as an owner of R9 clones, even if it's unpredictable, every once in a while I'll get some kind of return on that investment, and even if it
yeah.
takes me 6 years, maybe I'll get that full return back.
Look, I'm just hoping for, we get that week of assault battles at the end of the holiday season every year. I now want all of the era battles to be stacked on top of that, and it's just, it's like 60 droid brains that kind of rolls in for you at the end of the year as like as a happy holiday for you.
I would
So
love it. I would love it so much. I really would. I just kind of like with Proving Grounds when Proving Grounds first came out and people were like, well, why can't you just give the people who have Razor Crest the shards? Like it's only so and so amount of shard currency. And I would get severely downvoted and blasted by people when I pointed out, like, yes, now that's true. But in
yeah,
4 years, it is a metric boatload of
yep,
shard shop
yeah,
currency. So I
yeah.
would love it. I think it's unlikely.
20 times 2 isn't a lot. 20 times 16, yeah, that number starts to add up
It
really, really
starts to add
quickly.
up. And that's when we
Yeah,
have Relic 10 and they go, ha ha ha, none of this stuff matters anymore. So maybe
yeah,
they will do
yeah.
it. Maybe that's our Christmas present is Relic 10.
See, now you put it out there.
I did. Knock on, I think this is wood. It's particle board. I don't know. The rest of this post is just the math on the episode passes, and it's always good. It's always worth getting. I don't always buy it because it's the summer and I'm a teacher, but it is always a great value, and I do always recommend it. The last thing that's coming out of this would be the kit for Captain Ithano, which I believe released yesterday, and we started to see some testing today. I don't
I
know.
did not see any. I didn't see any of the testing. I do know, and we'll talk about some of these other things. One of the lines in the note from Meathead today was that team was not performing in PvP the way that they wanted it to, and they're
Yes.
looking at doing some adjustments.
And that's part of, they actually did that in the raid announcement, and we'll talk about the raid announcement
Yeah.
after we talk about the raid as well, but they did put in there that they were looking to change his leadership. And when we read
Yeah.
the leadership, I will say, like, I looked at this and I was like, that's it? Like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. It doesn't seem like much is going on here, but sure.
I don't like to judge the marquee events,
Yeah.
but it felt a little bit like a slog yesterday, which to me, and again, that's always the is it bad because he's the first of the faction and the offense generation just isn't there, or does he hit like a wet noodle? And so it's um, I'll let it play out. And but again, it's interesting to hear that they're kind of making that statement already. So
It did remind me kind of like the Inquisitors, if you remember the Inquisitor marquees when those first came out, and before we had Grand Inquisitor, and you'd get to
yeah,
you were on the last Inquisitor, and you were watching that marquee battle go for 10 minutes, and you're just like, is this all they do? They're
yeah,
hitting,
yeah,
like they're bitch slapping each other, and nothing's
yep,
happening. Am I supposed to be impressed? And that is how I felt yesterday. I was like, wait, these guys have health bars that are like 300 health, and they're barely making a
yeah,
dent.
yeah,
Like, what
yeah.
is going on? Yeah, I don't judge because I'm not gonna get him right away. It doesn't matter, but I did notice that. Uh,
Yep.
so do we want to do? I know we were talking about and we kind of prepped it. Do we want to do the whole kit reveal? Do we want to just throw this in the chat GPT? Do we want to do both? What are you feeling?
I really like this ChatGPT summary. Like this might be the this might be our thing. Like we came up with something new. Like this is pretty
Okay.
great.
And I will
Um,
say I did get a little bit of feedback from people, and I don't know if you did. I got some very constructive, very positive feedback, a lot of great notes. And not that it was negative feedback, but a few people were like, kit reveals are boring. And I was like, no, I know.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I know that already. I get that. Okay, so I did it this week, and I threw the entire kit into ChatGPT. Literally the whole thing. Every piece of it, I made sure that this stupid AI understood what was going on. And then I asked it a couple of questions. So I'm actually going to slide this over so our show notes can be seen and people can see that to some degree we do prep things. And I asked it to give me an overall summary. And I know you have it up. I just
yeah,
read the Era battle. I don't know if you want to go through this.
yeah. I'll tell you what. I'll run through this. But by the way, again, I think this is great because I agree that reading kits can be boring, but I think it's the best way to talk about kits.
Yeah.
So give us feedback on how this comes across. So I think um, so the first question was what are the strengths and the weaknesses of the kit? So again, this is dump it into an AI engine, tell us what's going on. So strengths, and we can argue about whether some of these make sense or not, but it said thematic cohesion, profit, foresight, buffs, debuffs, pirate synergy feel deeply connected. Yeah, I think we would expect to see that. Quiggold and Kick synergy is a great touch. Again, yeah, ChatGPT, tell me something I don't know. Very modular, high skill ceiling, rewarding when fully utilized. And this is, again, the the robots are smart. TW Omicron is impactful, but not overly broken due to the GL check. So there is a piece of the of his territory war Omicron that is, disabled if a galactic legend is there. So
Before you
Interesting
continue
piece
on
of
the
the story.
weakness, I am
Yeah.
sorry, but I just want to
Yeah.
clarify. I did not correct ChatGPT at all,
Yeah.
like, because that's part of the
Yeah.
interesting part. So if there's something that doesn't
Yeah.
make sense, that's the AI.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Uh, potential weakness. Some of the logic is complex. Players may have a hard time tracking profit stacks, buffs that are stolen, and conditional effects. And to that point, one of the things in the kit is your stacks of profit. You get more stacks of profit if you have more buffs than debuffs.
Yeah,
So it's essentially it's the I take my buffs, take my debuffs, subtract it, and then that comes back in. So that is an interesting. Again, I think that's an interesting point. There's a little complexity there. Um, Damage ceiling could feel low if profit stack requirements aren't met, and it relies heavily on a very specific set of Unix kicks and Quiggold. Limits viability without them, which again I think we would expect from that side. But I do think the profit piece and kind of the complexity there is a great call out, despite the fact that this is a relatively short kit that
yeah.
that we have as part of his kit. So um, and then we'll see where this goes. I asked ChatGPT to describe the entire kit as a summary and 100 words or less. So we are going to read this because I think this is fair. So Captain Ithano, is it Ithano? Is that the
That's how I
correct
pronounce it,
pronunciation?
Ithano.
Okay.
It's kind of like
Okay.
a Harry Potter thing, Ithano, Ithano. I don't know.
Yeah.
Leviosa,
Okay.
Leviosa.
Captain Ithano's kit centers around profit stacks, buff manipulation, and a strategic burst damage. He grants allies foresight, steals enemy buffs, and punishes enemies with fear, defense down, and true damage when profit thresholds are met. His unique enables self revive, bonus effect when marked, and powerful synergy with allies like Quiggle and Kicks. In territory wars, his Omicron assist chains team wide buff surges. He rewards tactical play with escalating power and thrives in teams that balance buffs, debuffs, coordinated strikes. Ithano is a scalpel, not a hammer, sharp, precise, and deadly.
I like that
Uh,
nice touch at the end.
I they always kind of have that weird like we're gonna put this at the end just so you know the robots wrote it. Uh, you know, but look, I think that's a really great summary. I mean, his whole thing is get debuffs out to the
Yeah.
other team, get as many buffs onto your team as you possibly can. That gives you profit, and profit is 5% offense for every stack of profit. Is that correct?
We can look at the actual kit reveal and see. Profit
And
previously seen on New Gunray. Oh, it's probably not going to tell us because it is on New Gunray. Um, sure.
hey, at least they told us where it's at before.
That's true. I still advocate for giving us an encyclopedia, but what do I know?
Yeah. All right. And of course, it's not on profit. 10% critical chance, critical damage per stack, max 50% until the end of battle. So up to which actually aligns nicely with um, the add-ons to
That they put in those kits.
those kits because it's stacked to 5 in those cases. So yeah, get a bunch of buffs out, get a bunch of debuffs out, and then you get the difference between the two in profit and 50, 10% critical or critical chance and critical damage, which is nice. Death mark is always handy. Especially if this gives us another dark side team that we can take to Dathomir on Rise of the Empire, because I hate that planet.
Oh, I can full auto it
And although
now.
that's
It's beautiful.
yeah, sometimes it takes a long time on depending on what some of your
It does.
teams are
Some of
to
them
wait
do,
for
like the
that.
C team. Pop up Halp and
Yeah,
C just takes forever.
yeah. Although I guess the death mark is on his Omicron, so that's not going to help you in Rise of the Empire. But yeah, I think it's an interesting little kit. I read through it a couple times. It does seem a little light,
Yeah.
um, which is not always bad. It's interesting they're making a big deal about this is the first character with a scatter gun in the game, which is Star Wars for shotgun.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, who knows what this will be? I mean, we need the other characters to kind of get a sense of what it's going to look like.
The only thing that I want to read from this kit, just because it's relevant to what we will kind of mention later, is the leadership. because that is what they're looking to change. And the leadership is, at the start of battle, all pirate allies gain 30% max health and protection, then gain offense up and tenacity up for 1 turn. At the start of their turn, if a pirate ally has more buffs than debuffs, they gain a stack of profit. If they have more debuffs than buffs, they lose a stack of profit. So very, very, very light, especially if you're trying to build a team around this.
So what I think would be really interesting, I think there's a really simple fix you could make to this. Tenacity up is undispellable.
Okay.
If you made tenacity up undispellable for maybe that becomes 2 turns instead of 1 turn. Um, you can't. It makes it harder for the other team to
To get the
do a burst of
debuffs.
debuffs, and then now you're losing stacks of profit right off the bat. It allows you to maybe quickly build them up for a couple of turns from that side. But yeah, it'll be what I guess they still have the max of 5 across this. So I was wondering if we weren't going to see a max of or more than something that happens with more than 5 stacks of profit, but
I'm wondering
he
if
still
they're going
has
to
enough to do
change the buff, or the yeah, it's a buff, right,
Yeah,
on Nuke Gunray, and take away that, and then put it even in Nuke Gunray's kit to
yeah,
he can only have 5, and these old pirates can only have 5, but now some of these new pirates can have more than 5.
yep.
Because otherwise it doesn't make sense. And my first thought here is, with the tenacity up as it is with 1 turn and it not being undispellable, is I'm going, oh, hey, this might be like Sith Empire food, as it
Yeah.
is. Or like even Inquisitor's food, if each stack of Purge counts as a debuff.
Or I mean, what would even be worse for CG in that case is if you can't get them fast enough, old bad batch, because now Echo comes in and drops 1,000 debuffs on the entire team, and all of a sudden you're stuck.
And you're not taking a
There's no
turn.
way to go from that side. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So you know, what to me, what's I think is funny is if you look at the basic kits that CG has built, like when we've gotten short kits like this
Yeah.
in the long run, the characters have ended up being actually really, really good. So is this, is he going to be a good character? Is he going to kind of keep that trend going from that side? But I just don't think we can tell.
I think it's just because it's on a leader, because the short kits are generally not leaders. They're like the supporting staff.
Yeah,
And the leadership ability is like a giant novel,
yeah.
and that's what kind of gives everybody in the team their vehicle to continue. But you're right, it is the first character, and we're not going to know until we see a little bit more of what's coming out of here. Um,
What I think the most interesting thing about the kit is this is the third character in a very short window with the Territory War Omicron,
yeah,
because Smia's, Mace's, this is a territory war leader on that side. Are is it wishful thinking that we get a cleanup of territory war? Although, look, I could care less. I'm not a big fan of. I think guild PvP takes too much time, and people
yes,
just don't have time. Um, you know, I like going to college football games on Saturday and getting a ping at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to get
it's
an
awful.
attack in as I'm walking into a stadium is not going to happen.
Yes.
That's just it's out. So
I can make a
um,
case with Jedi Master Mace Windu and the other like Smee. With this one, I think they've been doing this thing now where every character in a team gets a different Omicron.
yeah,
So
fair
so
enough.
this one I don't think is really means anything, but could those other two signal it? Definitely, possibly.
Yeah,
Um, to shift over from pirates because I don't care. The raid just came out. I got mine a few days ago. Ours actually drops again tomorrow, so I
okay,
had to go in with a little bit less information than you did. Your guild was a little bit smarter. They said, "Hey, let's like let everybody else do the work."
yeah,
No shade to Old Dirty Blasters or anything, but smart move. A lot more information came out.
yeah.
I will clarify as people listen to this, we are aware of the raid potential changes and we'll talk about those, but this is just us and our perception with what we've seen so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
What? How did you guys do?
So to your point, we hit max box.
Okay.
I think that we're in. We've got about another. We wrap up at noon Eastern tomorrow. Uh, I think we'll probably be north of 560.
Okay.
Um, but to your point, we that extra 5 or 6 days. The big change that happened was understanding how to break those clone teams up,
Yes.
and what should have been a 3.6 score became a 7.2 score, and made that box a lot more obtainable for us.
Hmm.
Um, you know, where did you guys end up before we kind of maybe start sharing some thoughts and things there?
Sure. So we are obviously, when it comes to, well, in the past, we have been a little bit more casual. And we were
Yeah.
doing, I think it's the 260 box in the old raid. With this raid, we ended up at like I think it's 245 is the actual box. We ended at like 235,
Okay.
which, as the tryhard officer in my guild, was very frustrating. We were so close. I actually ended up doing the tries for multiple of my guildmates because they were busy, and I am a teacher, so I'm bored and at home. And I said, "Hey, give me your login. Like, I'll help you out. I'll do it." So I've done this on like 5 different accounts at this point, and we still had people hitting under 1 million, which was very annoying, being a 645 million guild. Um, it could have just been that it's the beginning of the summer. A lot of the people in my
Yep.
guild are parents. They go on vacation. I do understand that. But we did do better than I initially expected early on before the raid released. And I did 7.1, and that was before the clone split was known
Yeah.
about.
So here's how I would describe ODB. Um, we are not innovators. We are executors. And I don't say that in a negative way that we are not innovative. But there are people that are going to get the raid on day one, and they're going to sit there and they're going to play for 24 hours to find the right teams to do that.
Yeah.
Um, where I think one of the things that I think we do great is, um, here's the plan for us to get where we want to get to. These are the teams. These are the teams that we should be running. This is what you need to do. And then people take that information and they just go do it like that. And that's where we're successful, is just put a plan together and everyone rallies behind it and runs. Um, what I think most players in this game fall into that execution piece where you
Hmm.
guys launched early. You've got some people that are sub million. Probably a case that when some details come out over the next couple of months, and it's like, by the way, these are probably the first two teams you should focus on, and you should be able to get them to 2.7. I think people will start to kind of pick those up, but it's hey, here's your list of 35 characters. Go be successful in the raid. And people, I understand that I don't want to be wrong. It's an expensive mistake. So I'm going to wait till someone kind of gives me
Yeah.
the plan from that side, where I think that people will pick these things up. My biggest takeaway is CG listened.
Yeah.
And if you're going to fail, you're going to fail on the first 30 seconds. So you don't run through like my last Naboo run, the B2 lead. I was 8 minutes into it when I failed the thing, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, great. I'm back to 25 minutes to get this done. You fail in 30 seconds, you can back out and then retry it. You might have to retry it a couple of times, but fail fast, fail early is which I
Is so
love.
much better.
Um, and when you're successful, you're done in 3 minutes.
There
It
were
it just it moves
times.
so quick.
Yeah. There were times in Naboo where I was like, okay, we got our 5 runs in, and I'd be sitting on the couch, and I would auto my Gungans while I was sitting on the couch watching TV with
Yeah,
my wife, and then we would lay down, and she would want to read. So I'd put in my headphones, and I'd go, all right, I'm gonna watch some Andor or whatever show,
yeah,
Skeleton Crew, and I would say, all right, I'm gonna get my raid run done in the next 20 minutes. And 2 episodes later, I haven't
yeah,
watched any of either show, and I'm still running my 3-man
yeah,
Sith team. And I'm getting frustrated, and I'm going, this is stupid. Why am I spending so much time on this? I
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
love that it's so quick. I know I'm gonna get bored of it very easily, but fine. I don't care. I'd rather get bored of this easily and run it in 3 minutes than get bored of it and run it in 45 minutes to an hour.
Uh, yeah, I think, and again, we'll talk about the potential changes coming up. I still, even without those, we'll put those aside for a second. I do think people should be prioritizing clones
Yeah.
for no other reason than they're a really easy team to run, and uh, they're going to work at 7, 8, and 9, where I don't think all of the teams kind of have that will have that same result. So you can start posting some scores that way. And again, I think they're great in a bunch of game modes. Um, you know, I think our philosophy in ODB around undermans,
Hmm.
and look, people want to underman. We're kind of falling into the mentality of you can underman, but don't bitch when you have to restart 15 or 16 times to make it work. Like,
Yeah.
because we're not everyone has the same level of R9s, because some of us throw cash at it, some of us don't. But um, over the next year, I'm more than happy to put more and more characters on a team to make it happen. Like from
Hmm.
that side. So I think that's the. I do think quality of life, a bunch of 5-person teams, but yeah, I just I think that they even take away the building on, some of the things that they learned from Naboo. I just even think the format of the raid, of this kind of like multi-wave kind of approach that they have, like, I just think it's just a better Naboo. Like, I think it's,
Yeah.
rather, you still get waves of characters, but there's some interaction. It's not just it's actually built around the whole idea of, like, no, you don't want the other team to take a team, or to take
To
a turn.
take a turn.
So I don't have to worry about the 3,000 turns that the droids are gonna get before I get to go anywhere. It's like, no, 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 you just stop them from taking a turn, and then it's over.
Yes.
Um,
I think my one criticism is not a criticism of the raid itself. It's just of the raid system, and obviously having done this early, it might not happen as much later on. When you restart a raid, there are 3 buttons, and one of those buttons is discard and retry. Just put me right back into it. Stop bringing me back
yeah,
to the team comp. One button should bring me back to the team comp. One
yeah.
button should just refresh what I was already doing, and one button submits the score.
And I'm not calling someone out for what they did. I'm doing it because I felt terrible for them. But pitcher in ODB was really excited because he'd built some really great teams, and he was going to score really, really high, and he was trying to figure out one of the clone runs, and he accidentally hit submit on a 0. Like, there
For
should be no reason that there's a button there for
zero.
like, 0 should just be, like, discarded, like, should be the only viable button in that case. But he was so excited because he had enough points that he was gonna push us over the threshold, and it was just like, "Oh, man." He's like, I I I I coulda had a 3.6, and I dropped a 0 on that one. So, they need to that and trust me, I almost did it a bunch of times myself, because especially if you're restarting and kinda going over and over again.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't need character select, especially if you're trying to underman, and it's so you go to character select, and then you gotta remove 2 or 3 characters off of
Hmm.
that list, and um, that can go away.
Now, the other thing, this is actually going back to something that you had just said previously when it comes to prioritizing the clones. Just one reminder that I want to give people is, and I am probably going to bring them to R9. I already have my clones at R9, my Bad Batch at R9. Just kind of keep in mind when you're building these teams, even on day one, CG did say, hey, there is a major bug with Bad Batch. And the
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
that makes them work is the R9 tier, and that's being given to them on all of the tiers. They are already
Yes.
considered to be the hardest team to run and the most pain in the ass. So when you're deciding on your team, just realize that team, even outside of the changes that were announced, well, not changes, the things they're looking at, that was already announced, and they're probably fixing that. And the team isn't going to suck, but you're going to have to very heavily invest in them if you want them to do well.
Yeah, I think that Bad Batch will be a team, and like I thought that they were the first team that I ran. I didn't understand any of the mechanics,
Hmm.
and I finger mashed my way into a 3.6 on like the second attempt. I think that there's some weird quirks with the team. I think that once people figure that out, but I think they're I think they're a great R9 team if you're willing to put the time and energy into it. I'm not sure I would put the time and energy into it until we know what
Going
7,
on.
8, and 9 looks like. It is gonna
Yes.
look like in that case because it's gonna take people time, and it's great if, like, you can get everybody to R7 and you can get you can get 1.8 million, and if you can get everybody to R8 and you can get the 2.7, but if you get everybody to R7 and you're doing 500,000, like, that's frustrating,
Yeah.
so I think to your point, I think we need to kind of figure out what that's gonna look like in some of those cases, so, um,
And I believe for a lot of
I'm try
people with Bad Batch, I know for me, probably for you as well, from what I just heard, bringing them in for this was literally the first time I'd used them. I have
yeah,
had them,
yeah,
but I had never used them. I had never put them in a team. I didn't know the kits because they weren't useful to me specifically. So going into that raid, I was like, okay, I guess we're gonna just press buttons and maybe this works. And I happened to max them at the R5 tier. And then I went in on another account at the R7 tier, and I was on a live stream at that point, and people are like, no, 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 you're being dumb. Use that move. No, 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 no. That's the move to
yeah,
use. Do this thing. And I was like, oh, this team does things. Okay. I don't
yeah,
just
yeah.
press the buttons.
So I am gonna make a really quick argument for new batch
Hmm.
now, because this came up and we had some back and forth in our guild about um, the bug and whether fixing the bug was the right thing for CG to do. But so here's what they do in the game right now. All right, if you're willing to put an Omicron on Wrecker for territory battles, which again I know not everybody kind of that's a philosophical debate. Um, that team, while not an auto because some of the weird mechanics on it, you can button mash your way all the way through phase 6 with that onto those R9 planets. Super easy. Like they're just put them down, you're good. In Grand Arena without Omicrons, they are beating Queen Amidala.
Yeah.
Now, Queen Amidala was the second highest placed defense in 3v3s. She's typically in the top 5 and in 5v5s. If you have a team that can just erase one of the most commonly placed defensive teams, and by the way, frees up Bane to go do other things,
Hmm.
that's a win. That's just a win. Is so, you know, again, I think sometimes the thought about teams, how we think about teams influences whether people use them or not. It's like, oh, new batch is stupid. I don't want to do it. They're actually good. Like they're a good team in multiple game modes, especially that GAC thing to me is a big deal, especially for a lot of people that don't have all the tools to solve Queen
Yes.
Amidala. If you just have like an automatic win in that case, great. Oh, they didn't set it on defense. Awesome, even better.
Yeah.
You know,
And everybody sets that on defense. I
yep,
don't think I've
absolutely.
ever gone into a match post quad man. I know I'm in Kyber, so it's different than someone in Bronzium, but I don't think
Yeah,
I've gone in since they've come out where there wasn't a quad May on defense. And I would love to free up my Bane, especially in a DS Ray world right now where I need to like
yeah,
deal with that. And now I can't use my SLKR against Ahsoka because I have to put it on defense to
yeah,
counter. It's nice to be able to have the option of having Bane. My
yeah.
last question here before we talk, about briefly the changes that are being proposed, or at least the things they want to change. How are you feeling? And I know we are both at the higher end from I don't think a free to play perspective, but from like a mid game perspective. How do you think the raid how do you think the scores are being affected and whether the mid game is getting enough out of this raid versus what they were previously getting in Naboo? And I understand it's the first week, but just from what we've seen so far.
So I think where this always comes back to is, um, again, I'm in sales. I'm not a salesperson. I'm a sales engineer, but I'm in sales, and I kind of joke that sales manager math is all numbers go up at 10% until the end of time.
Hmm.
And that's just not the way that it works. Typically, what happens is you have a couple of really good years, and then some things happen, and your number falls off, and it kind of resets, and it has to go back up. And how you manage those resets are what matters. That's what the rate is. I
Yeah.
mean, in reality, take away everyone is kind of the same place as they were in the previous. The expectation should really be when a new raid comes out, even for high end, you're going to take a step back box or two as you're rebuilding your team. I think that what that mid tier needs to look at is, what is the target for our guild? And I think the target should always be the box beyond where you ended up in the last raid, because what you'll
Hmm.
find is you keep adding another box on top of that until you get to the end. And then it's just do the math. All right. So we've got, I looked at it. So 5.4 million across 50 guild members is 275 million.
Yeah.
And that's a box at that point. Like that should be, and you should be looking at this going, how am I going to get 5.4 million? And I think that number is achievable for a number of people in the next 3 months. The next 3 months are gonna be rough, like, I make no mistake about that, but, will the Bad Batch is completely available right now.
I think
Within the
very,
next
very generous bonus drops too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The clones are all available right now, are they?
Two of them are
No.
farmable. All
Okay.
four of them are at least shipment farmable.
Okay. S and again, you've got to put Tarkin into that, but they're a really good team in multiple game modes. That should probably be where you're focusing your time and energy right now on those. The
Yeah.
pirates are gonna come, and I get it. People say, "Well, I need to plan for the next Galactic Legend." Yep, I get it. I got it. Great. But I think that there's a path for people, and I think the path is a lot shorter. The problem is that for guild leaders, for guild officers, is herding the cats in the right direction is always the problem.
Yes. It comes down to communication. My
Yep.
communication with the guild, when this raid was a little bit more unknown, when we started to get the Naboo like announcement of it's going to be delayed a little bit, was twofold. It was our first goal is how long it's going to take us to hit the box we were at previously,
Yep.
right? And we had isolated, and by we I mean me, 1 to 3 raids, right? We
Yep.
need to be at the box we had at 1 to 3 raids. And then the next was how do we get to that +1, right? And the
Yeah.
goal was I want to see that +1 in 3 months. So you have now the time between Naboo, which was approximately, I want to say 2 to 3 months, plus the 3 months on top of that, so 5 months to get us in a position where we have at least a single box above what we had before, so that we're making moves. And as we're talking about this, I kind of had this epiphany thought of like maybe we need to start thinking of raids kind of like the era battles, and not like
Yeah.
rewards being taken away, but rather this is a reward for investing in the thing,
Yes.
and the return on that investment is the reward, is being able to use them in TB, is being able to use them in GAC, and it kind of like compounds around an entire account.
And look, I was, and there are some folks in ODB that probably got real sick of me in the first two raids in this new cadence, that I was trying to convince people that it's not about I'll never earn these resources back that I put on these teams. It is no, no, no. You are making more resources available for what's next.
Yeah.
And look, I just did some very basic math. So we have a Galactic Legend coming in 3 months. All right, that team is going to be a team that everybody should be building because it's a Galactic Legend, and we all do that. All right. So if you can get your guild motivated around Galactic Legend Hondo at R8, which
Yeah.
I don't think is a stretch. There's resources in the raid to get them there. just that team coming into the game is going to add 135 million to your
To your
guild
guild.
total at that point. That's a box. Like in your case, I'm fairly certain from that 240 plus 135, that's another box in
That's
that
roughly a
that
box,
case.
especially when you consider the interim of those 3 months.
Yeah. So and that's what's going to be different about that is that's going to happen for a lot of people, in that month 4 to 6 time
Yeah.
frame for the raid. When we have historically been telling people, "Oh, no, 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 stop investing in your teams at 3 months." That's not the way to look at it. It's the continue to build, and then when your guild hits the point that like, "Hey, this we've hit the point of no return," start dumping those resources into other teams.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk about this on another show, but like the whole, you know, R5, R7, R8 projects I've done in the past and why that's just so impactful to building a stockpile after the fact.
You just gave away your whole parking lot there.
I know.
You,
I know.
you,
Look, look, I know look, I'm not giving away the milk for free yet, but I'm actually telling them that we'll be selling it later. Like we're gonna this is how you bring them back in at a later date.
good. That's what we have to do. So the last thing that we need to talk about tonight is the changes that literally within the last 2 hours kind of released. And I keep saying changes, but I just mean the issues that
Yeah.
CG has with the raid, right? And we're going to kind of switch back over from the game to the issues, and I'll kind of isolate them all. It was 4 hours ago. So the team has been watching the attempts and have noticed some bugs and made some observations. Now, interesting because some of these are bugs and some of them are not. Undersized teams. The Order 66 raid description and modifier indicates that undersized teams get penalized for bringing in less than 5 characters. The team is evaluating whether the current penalty is reflective of the balance expectation of the raid for the higher modifier tiers. Now, again, I do find it funny how they say this, is they're kind of like, hey, we clearly told you we don't want you to underman, but you figured it out.
Yeah.
Which is just funny to me. And we could talk about this all as a grouping thing.
Yeah.
The next one, Disguised Clone Troopers Clever Ruse, does not grant 20% turn meter at the proper time. What's essentially happening with this kit, I've known about this for a few weeks now, outside of Order 66, is that he gets granted 20% turn meter at the beginning of his turn, but you don't lose turn meter until you take an action. So effectively, he's getting 20% useless turn meter that just gets decayed, right? And that's going to affect him outside of the raid as well, in GAC, TB, everywhere, because now he'll start getting that turn meter. How it'll affect the raid, I don't know. Since this not only impacts the player obtainable version, but also the enemy version, we need to do some more in-depth investigating here. We will do our best to decide on and communicate our preferred solutions. Number 3, damage over time stacks from Disguised Clone Trooper are triggering whenever the unit performs an ability instead of at the start of a turn. This is for both the player obtainable version and the enemy version. This will be fixed. So this they've already
Yeah.
they've already decided they're fixing it. Give me your thought before we continue.
So that's on assist, and the whole team is built around like the whole raid thing for him is built around you need him to assist. So
Yes.
he's applying damage over time every time. Yeah, okay. That's a
So he
that's a
just keeps
problem.
going.
That yeah, yeah.
It's actually happening with Hunter as well, where if you target him to assist, Meathead, close your ears. If you target Hunter to assist, he's only supposed to call someone else to assist if it's his turn. But he's calling someone else to assist no matter what.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Meathead, you can open your ears now. Order 66 pirate modifier, a reminder that pirates are still ongoing. It looks like they just want to buff pirates, and they
Yeah.
don't seem to think that pirates are performing as intended based on, I'm assuming, internal testing, since we don't really have a pirate team right now. And the one pirate is maxing the bottom tier by himself.
Yep.
Keller and Beck, we've observed Keller and Beck performing exceptionally well under certain circumstances, and while we're monitoring this progress, our current status is to not intervene, but to keep monitoring. We'll keep eyes on it if we feel these start to get out of hand. I'm going to skip 6 and do that out of order. Order 66 raid Foxbug. One stack of execute is not being removed from Vader when the target enemy has at least one buff. This will be fixed in an upcoming update. And then just a reminder of the Bad Batch modifier, that there is an issue where the final tier of the Bad Batch modifier is applying to all tiers, and this will be fixed. And then the thing that I skipped was Captain Ithano. After internal testing, they are looking to buff his leadership in all game modes, including the raid, including PvP. They just don't know how to do it yet. What are your thoughts here?
So let's talk about Keller and Beck first,
Okay.
because when I skimmed that today, and I didn't get all the way into it, but that reads very similar to what they said about the B2 lead in the Naboo raid. Like, hey, this is not an intended result. It's being
Mm-hmm.
really successful. We're gonna monitor it. Nothing changed with that team. Like it's a case of just like, hey man, I'm warning you, like this is happening, that we're watching
And we're
this.
watching
But
it.
again, there's a piece of this also tied to the first thing that they said, but I don't think the Beck one is that big of a deal. And my again, Pico's 100% opinion. Again, I'm saying it so it is, but of all of the things on here, that would be the one that I would be, if I were CG, I would touch last, because right now, back in Jocasta +3 is the most available team for players of the game. Like
Yeah.
you take that one away, and you do have people that just can't play.
Yes.
And I just think that, I think that's a bad idea. Like, take the L. Like, CG, if you're gonna, if we want to put it that, like, take the L on that one, and just let people run with it.
And you know what?
Again, understanding how you're going to dress at the top.
I don't even think they should consider. Clearly, they are considering it like an L right now, but I don't even think they should consider it. If you think about all the other raids, there's always an accessible team, and this is the
Yeah,
one like very accessible to everybody team. Let the team do its work. Like
yeah, yep.
people still have to invest in it, right? They might have Keller and Beck at R7 for Mandalore, but unless they really want to get those teams to the high levels, they still have to bring the R9s out. They still have to do that. They still have to invest in the raid, just at their level.
And to tinfoil hat it a little bit, because look, everybody loves saying, CG's only doing this because they're going to make me, you know, build up characters that are terrible in other places. Look, the team is built around Keller and Beck, which is a pretty good player, or pretty good character. Jocasta Nu, which is, hey, if you weren't doing Conquest or Redbox, you're behind the eight ball already. So this is again reinforcing Conquest characters are important. And yeah, there are three garbage characters that are going to come along with it, but they're available.
Yeah.
Everyone should kind of have those characters at 7 star and probably G12 right now. Then it throws some resources on it again. 2.7. And if your goal is 5.4 million, 2.7 gets you half the way there. Like, yeah, I just that I don't think they should touch it.
I don't think so either. And I know that there are a few things here that they, Bad Batch. As much as I think that it's going to negatively affect how people participate with Bad Batch, I do understand them fixing the Bad Batch modifier. They did tell us that literally on day one.
Yep.
So it is something that has been out in the air. I understand them fixing it. The disguised clone trooper, clever ruse, not granting 20% turn meter. It is a known bug that has been out there for some time outside of the raid. I'm curious if it was one of those things that they were like, well, this team is working to the expectation we wanted it to, so we won't touch it. And now it's not. But it is still something that has been bugging the kit for a while, so I get it if they fix it.
I am gonna push back on something though.
Okay.
Yes, it impacts our version and their version,
Mm-hmm.
but they have two and we have one.
Yeah.
If they if now now if it's you get TM but it doesn't do anything, maybe it does. I don't like the idea that they're going to get two characters. They're going to get 20% bonus turn meter, and I'm only getting one, because that means they're going to get two for every one of mine. I guess is the way that I look at it. But um,
I will say that at
again,
least
it's a quibble.
this is one thing where I am happy that they at least said they have to do like further investigation to see how it will affect
Yeah,
the raid,
yeah,
and because
yeah,
I
yeah.
would like, I think the clones perform fine with Lord Vader, but there are some times where I get frustrated. I would like to see how that being fixed the way it's intended to be, how it will affect that team outside of the raid. Um, the one thing here that does frustrate me is the undersized teams. I understand, day
Hey,
one.
can we hang on to the undersized team thing for 1 second? Because I want
Okay.
to say something that ties to this, and I think it goes back. So, and it goes back to the Bad Batch piece. I so there are, unless you read all the modifiers at each one of the ranks, kind of
Hmm.
like I think it's starting at like 4 and up. Each of the factions brings in a pretty powerful faction bonus that kind of, so this there's a Bad Batch faction bonus at the rank 7 level of the
Yes.
raid, which is what's being applied all the way down. My view, in if anyone at CG ever listens to me say anything, my view is when that buff comes in, that needs to be a relic check. And at that point, every time that I make that next relic rank, as soon as that buff is in place, that is a max score team on the raid. So if
Yeah.
we want to bring in pirates at tier 5 and they get their super faction bonus, that should mean at R7 it's an automatic, at R8 it's an automatic, and at R9 it's an automatic. 5-person team, that should be the requirement, and that should be the level set that we're doing in this case. And I think that relates back to the Bad Batch, and I think that's going to relate back to some of what we're going to talk through here on the Underman team as well. But I think it's important that people understand like that. There's a reason why you take certain teams
To certain
to relic
levels.
levels and stop with others because they're you just what happens at that point transforms them.
Yes. And that's why with Bad Batch, they were kind of isolated as the R9 team or one of
Yeah,
the R9 teams because it was an R9 modifier. So
yeah,
people said, hey, it looks like they're not going to perform well outside of these specific tiers because of what they do.
yeah.
Um, with the undersized teams, you and I did this right at very different times, which is weird to
Yep.
say because it's only been out for a week. When I was doing the raid, the 3-man Jedi Master Mace Windu had been figured out. Um,
Yep.
a 4-man Bad Batch at R9 had been figured out, getting rid of Batcher. I believe a clone 4-man had been figured out at that point.
Yep.
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it had been. And then I got my 7.2 and I was happy and I was like, great.
Yeah.
When you did the raid, Scribe, I believe he cracked the code. It might have been someone on the raid server. If it was the raid server, please yell at me. I
It,
apologize.
it was not Scribe, and at the end he's like I don't know who did this. It was not
Okay.
me, but he actually did point out that
Okay.
that it wasn't him that found it. So yeah,
Okay. So it
yeah,
was probably someone on the raid server, and I
yeah,
apologize. And those people on the raid server, Pariah, Belloc, those you guys are great. Um,
yep,
they found, not me. I had nothing to do with it. A 2-man split,
yep,
and then a 3-man split with no leadership, effectively taking
yeah,
5 characters from a cohesive team and turning it into a very joyous 7.2 million right off the
yes,
bat.
yep.
It's
Uh,
Go ahead.
we had people in ODB that scored 18 million
Yeah.
with 16 characters in the raid. And again, more power to them that they took that. I did not. I could not. The Beck team, I couldn't skinny down all the way to 3, which where I knew some people did. Um, Look, two things can be true, and the first thing that is true is that CG made it very clear with the way that the raid was being designed that they did not want underman squads.
Yeah.
It's now I understand that people are upset. I understand the view, but I think we also need to look at this from the lens of we told you we don't want this. You did it anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Again, we are collectively smarter than they are because there are more of us than there are of them. No one, look, we can say CG doesn't test. There's a lot of validity to that. No one at CG is ever going to put 3 clones without a lead on a team and poke around at it for a few hours until they figure out a way to make it happen.
Yeah,
Like that's an invalid case.
because there's only a few of them versus the
Yeah,
thousands. Like, it was beautiful
yeah,
to watch. I wasn't really a part of
it
it
is.
because I don't have the patience. It was beautiful to watch on the raid server, like people just
Yeah.
posting these screenshots and figuring things out. Um, I'm frustrated because I'm kind of in the middle where I think that so many people have gotten excited about these undermans and have now prioritized investing in the clones because of these undermans. But I also understand why they would want to change it.
Yeah.
And I know it's probably going to be changed for that reason. And I do think it will shift my perspective a little bit to slightly more negative. Um, but I still get it at the same time. You know, like I'm kind of on that scale, and I'm like balancing back and forth, and I just don't know where I land on this until it actually happens.
So let's maybe level set a little bit about what we think this really means. And I think the first is, um, and I went out to Reddit today and it kind of went through the post on these announcements, and I was actually surprised by some very measured takes. But there were some people again. I don't have a lot of characters. I could score 300,000 with Hondo, and now I can't score anything. That's
Yeah.
not what they're worried about. They
Hmm.
they they, they could the one character, two characters scoring less than a million. That's not what they're chasing. What they're really what they're upset about is taking a 3.6 million R9 team and turning that into 7.2. I mean
Yes.
that is damn near 50% of the max score that you can do in the raid. Like that's 40% of the way there. That's what they don't want.
Yes.
They because again, if people solve the raid too easy and they've got nothing to work on, there will be people at my end of the game that will leave because there's just nothing to do. They'll be upset that this happened and they'll be upset that there's nothing to do. I also believe that this is less about a four-man underman, and this is more about a two-man or a three-man without a leader.
Yes.
Like, there are varying levels of kind of where this sits for them, and I think it's the clones team. Like, I think that everything else aside, I think it's probably the clones team. I don't. You can convince me that the Mace team is a problem as well. Um, you know, I don't. Let me ask you, what. Let's go back 6 weeks.
Okay.
And if CG says we are changing the raid that you are not allowed to bring a team into the raid unless there's 5 characters.
For the
Is
upcoming
this
raid,
is the
right?
for the upcoming, so for this raid, if the rule is going to be coming in, you needed to bring 5 characters to so is it is it better that they told us what that if they would have done that and set the expectation up front and just taken it on the chin because they would have, I mean, make no
Yeah.
mistake, or saying like, "Look, we don't want this," and then as people kind of find a way to violate it, "Hey, we're gonna change it." Is there a better way to go about it?
I think that that would have been the better way because they did release the Order 66 modifiers ahead of time, and people did
Yeah,
isolate and say like, oh, they clear like undermans will not work,
yeah,
right? Everyone was
yeah,
like, undermans will not work. And then they did work. And then they worked even
yep.
better. And then they worked even better than that, right? So I think if CG had said in that announcement, by the way, you need to bring 5 into this raid, um, it would have been a better outcome, because then the thing that I deal with when it comes to information in this game is that every piece of equipment I apply, unless I do it because I'm drunk or bored, um, it's because I've had information and I'm
Yeah.
making a choice based on information. So when information comes out that I can do this one thing and I make a choice because of that, I can definitely understand why players get frustrated. Um, I do think it would have been smarter for them to make it so that you do need to bring in 5. And if that was not the option, right? Because you have the Hondo solo, the Tarkin solo if you're later on, then you need to do something that is either super hyper specific to the teams that you don't want doing things, or you need to make it so batshit insane that people aren't like at maybe at tier 0, there is no underman issue. But once you get
Yeah.
to relic 1, if you bring in less than 5, all enemies have 500% offense. Like something that's just so batshit insane that there's no way that you could win while still isolating the bottom.
Or even if it's like, look, we know we're going to set box thresholds of where you can underman and where you can't. And it's like, look, anything past, level 4, we're just going to put a hard, you have to bring 5 characters into this. Um, again, I look, multiple things. From look, multiple things can be true. I This doesn't surprise me. It
Yeah.
doesn't. This is me telling my son, if I walk down the basement one more time and I see soda cans out, by the Xbox, you're grounded. And when I go downstairs in the basement and I see it and I walk into his room and I grab his phone and he wakes up and what'd you do that for? And I'm like, like I told you,
Hmm.
I set expectation. The expectation wasn't met. We're making changes is where this sits. By the way, it's always fun when you wake up your kid at 8 o'clock in the morning to that. Yeah. But at the same time, it was nice to watch our raid channel because I made a concerted effort this time about I'm not going to get worked up as people are saying I can't do this.
Hmm.
Like I decided it because I got really frustrated last time, and it's not that I like to be a positive person. I think it's the easiest way to say that. And it was nice interacting with people in our raid server and having it generally be positive or generally be like, oh, I can contribute. And there are folks that are typically going to be in that bottom 20% of the guild that were excited because they were contributing to the bottom line. And some of those people they're gonna struggle for a few more weeks to get there.
Yeah.
And I do feel for people in that situation. I don't know what the answer is here. Um I also do think it's really cool when people can kind of pull things off that they shouldn't,
Yes. It's
and
fun in a game when you feel like you can
it is.
break something.
Uh, the To me, the most interesting thing around um, the clones underman is where I learned all of the raid mechanics because you have to understand all of the raid mechanics to make it work.
Okay.
And more importantly, I understand the clones kits now. Like I did not understand. Like I've read them a bunch of times, but there's all of these different pieces, like how disguised clone trooper actually works. Like I learned their kits because you have to understand that to make everything work. And like I thought that was really cool. I'm like, oh, I understand how to use these guys now. Like because I have been using them wrong.
I was really
Um,
excited to do this tomorrow, and now you have made me not excited at all. I was like, my
no,
raid
you should,
launches.
but you should for no other reason than um, get the rewards while you can now,
It's true.
and
It's
and
true.
then put them back into those teams to start building the things up that you need to. So
Yeah, 100%. And I think, again, this is such new information that I feel like in the last 4 hours, my opinion has changed and ping ponged so many times. And I
yeah,
may have a more concrete opinion in a week as CG releases more information on it. I do hope that they communicate those things to us because sometimes, like with B2, I don't even remember if they ever said, by the way, we're not touching B2,
They
or
did.
if they
Yeah,
they did.
they
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Um, he here's the last thing so this is what I ran for the raid, and it's gonna be relevant in a second. So I ran the 5-man Bad Batch. I did a 4-man Mace.
mhm.
I ended up moving to a 5-man Beck because I couldn't make it work, and I have the resources to do it, and then 2 clones, 3 clones. I had already decided that despite the fact that I could score 18 million with those characters, I was going to when the pirates were there, I was gonna take the pirates to immediately, it was like, "Well, I'm not taking the pirates to R9. I will take the pirates to R9 just so I don't have to restart the 2 clones teams."
Yeah.
And I was going to add a 5th character onto that Mace team because there's still some RNG to it. So, like, despite the fact that people can underman it with the clones, I will still tell anyone in the world, "No, no, no, you need to build a 5th team, and you need to consolidate them together just to save you time." Because most people are going to be really happy starting 15 or 16 times to make that work, and it's in a short window, but you do that for 7 months, you're not happy.
It sucks. And I've always, and I
It
think
should
we
have been
kind
a
of
bridge.
agree. We agree on this. Like when people, like even in the olden times of this game, like with the gas event, right? And you'd see people like trying to do it at G12 and like hitting their head against the wall and be like, why is it taking me 4 hours? I've always been of the mindset I'm going to put gear on them because I don't have time. I
Yeah.
don't want to deal with time. I want to get it done. I want to get it over with. And that's just
Yep.
always been my mindset. And it's, it is what it is. And I think with this raid versus other raids like Naboo, every character that isn't a Vanguard, because there are like I'm a Gundy and,
Yeah.
characters you're not going to use, every character is useful somewhere else. So to me,
Yep.
I'm so much more amicable to putting relics towards characters because I know I will use them in TW, I'll use them in TB, I'll use them in GAC, and I don't feel like it's just a raid relic.
Yep. Yeah.
Um,
Uh, I I I don't know. I think that it's gonna come down to, um, I hope it takes them some time to come to this decision so
yes,
that people can use the clones as a bridge to be able to start building some of the other teams so that when the clones disappear, they're at least able to recover part of that
part of them.
by being successful in the raid.
I think it would be
Like
smart for
just
players to not
yeah,
stop at the clones, and say, "Oh, I'm done."
yeah,
Put put some agency towards other things just in case, because I think it's
yeah,
like 85-15 that things are going to be changed.
yeah. So
It's
start building a
unlikely.
team that you can get 1.8 with when those clones have to come back together to make that work, so
Yeah,
that you're not losing 3.6. You're only losing half of that, and now you're starting to kind of move down that path. So
100%.
um, we'll see. Yep.
You have anything else?
I don't.
No,
Outside of we wanted to keep this to an hour, which let's
that
be
was never going to
honest,
happen.
was never going to happen. But we're at about an hour and a half, which is not bad.
My wife asked how long I was going to be tonight, and I said, because I just did a stream with Rabid Beaver a few nights ago, and it took like 3 hours. And I told her it was going to be 2 hours. So
Yeah,
she asked me how long it was going to be, and I said to her, I was like, "Oh, it's going to be about an hour, but let's be realistic. It's going to be probably about 50% more than that."
yeah, yeah,
So I'm about right on time.
yeah.
Um, the one thing that I did want to add that has nothing to do with the game, but it did have to do with feedback from last time. A lot of people were asking about the humming in the background, and I would love to gaslight Pico into thinking that it's him tapping on his desk. It is my HVAC. I can't do much about it. However, I did learn about these things called expanders on your mic, and I've been playing with one. And I've been trying to figure out the settings. So please, please, please let me know if it was at least marginally better this time, because then I know my settings are somewhere getting there.
So, by the way, there will be background noises no matter what we do to this entire thing. For folks that maybe didn't listen to HNN, the Wonder Dog will show up from time to time. Um, my wife and kids who can't seem to have a conversation unless it's one yelling from the upstairs of the house to the bottom, which is right outside of my office window. So bleed over is going to happen, but yeah, I didn't pick up anything, although I didn't hear it last time, so we'll see. Um,
Are you saying that
yeah,
we're not professional podcasters with an
no,
editing
no,
staff?
no, we are not. In fact, it was one of those. I'm like, I blame Sarah. Like, I finally got like a mic set, like an actual mic set up, and then she
Mhm.
quit like a month later. And I'm like, I spent all this time getting this thing, and like, oh, I wonder if this is still plugged in. I'm like, oh yeah, it is. So I actually pulled the mic out today.
Okay, so there we go, Sarah. It's
Yeah,
all your fault. That's it. We're gonna
yeah,
we're gonna leave on that. Sarah, it
yeah.
is all your fault. Thank you for joining us tonight on Zeta Protocol. I had to remember the name because it's still very new to me. I would love to say we'll be here in 2 weeks, but again, I think our cadence is we try to do it as much as we can when it matters, right?
Yeah.
Like when there's something to talk about. But we do intend on this being regular enough, and I'll leave you with the last word if you have anything to say.
Again, I'm just dumbfounded that people are willing to give us time of their life to listen. Thank you all very much. Having a blast, and folks, keep your head up. There's gonna be a lot of churn over the next couple weeks in the game. Keep your head up. Understand, we always seem to figure out a way to get through this.
You heard it here first.